on
Recording
June 25th.
In progress.
A bit of a kind of orientation slash, for lack of a better word, training webinar, so that we can do as much as we can to enhance the kind of reliability and authenticity of the review process. So that's our peer review process in a nutshell. The reviewers have been contacted, and to my knowledge, almost everyone has said yes, so we're going to be moving forward with that 25th session next steps.
So from there, the reviewers are going to be following kind of a standard rubric, if you will, but what we've done is created a campus completion plan checklist, knowing that each of the plans are going to be different, but there's some things that, based on the template which you've all received and working towards, should be the same. And so if you go to the completion lab now, up there on the top right in that news and announcements corner, you'll find a Word document for the campus completion plan checklist. It's just one page, aligns with the template, just a quick look to make sure that you're hitting the right points. And if you check them all off and the plan communicates that well for each of those areas, we should be good. Turning in the plans, as we discussed, it's going to go to Houston Davis's office via Angela Thomas. Her email is up on that announcement too, on the completion plan checklist announcement, and it should be coming from your president's office. Again, by July 1st, and earlier if you'd like, better, great. All right. So we wanted to go into some of the, whatever those bells are, we want to go into some of the questions at least submitted prior to during the registration period. One, and we'll repeat the question first and field it in here. So the first one was, as we consider technical support options, so if we want to track students for job placement or alumni, will USG have a system that we will use, or will each institution find its own way to do these things? Susan, if you want to say something about that.
Yeah, we will be matching our data with Department of Labor data later this summer, and we will be discussing or considering options on ways to share those data with our institutions. So in my opinion, there is no need for institutions to individually go out and try to match their data with Department of Labor data. Now, if you want to, many of our institutions already do surveys of their graduates and that sort of thing. So, of course, you should feel free to continue to do those sorts of things and to use those data. But I just wanted to let you know that we are planning to do a match with Department of Labor data at the system level, and of course we'll be able to parse that out by institution.
Okay, good. Thank you for explaining the bill. So we had a question about July 1st being a Sunday. We do know it's a Sunday. It's, if we set it on July 2nd, then plans might come in early Tuesday morning. So we're saying, take the weekend if you need to, but make sure it gets there before start of business Monday. So July 1st still stands, but end of day July 1st. So next question. Can we get a CCG contact list so we can contact technical or USG schools for collaboration? We can do that. One of the things we'll do is each of you have designated a campus contact. We'll put that right up on the completion lab. Also, as we turn toward, the lab was geared toward just you all as a smaller subset of the USG community. But as we turn to opening that up and getting more people involved with the work after the plans are done, we will be looking at building out kind of an expert contact list for each and work with you on that. So we'll post the initial campus contact list, and then we'll look at how to facilitate those connections better after the plans have turned in. Next question was, how far out do we plan, for example, to 2020?
Yeah, this is Linda again. I think one of the things to keep in mind is that this work is going to be an ongoing process with adjustments and changes and realignments and things like that, and potentially new ideas as issues come up over the course of the next few years. So I wouldn't worry about planning too far out to 2020. I mean, certainly a long-range vision might be okay to consider, but at least maybe 2 to 3 years to get started with these plans, and maybe your longer term thinking would be a little less specific or a little more detailed. We just don't really know what's going to happen in the next 8 years or so. So we may be responding to in a different way 5 years from now than we are today. So I don't feel too constrained about that or having to project too far out with what you want to do.
Okay. And then so the next question from the registration was, we are trying to plan for new targeted populations like the military, but should we concentrate at this point on refining our ways of knowing about current students instead? So on this really shouldn't be an either-or question, but maybe a different way of answering each of those. Yes, if your focus on graduation, say, for your primary population, because they're already in there, but new populations, by definition, would be an access issue, and so we would expect to see appropriate access strategies around that. But really, the point of Complete College Georgia is to make sure that we're looking at all these populations, and some of them will be new, but do your best to address each of those. All right, and we're going to turn to some of the questions on the screen for just a second here. Okay, the question was, does the checklist contain any guidelines as to the optional data appendix? So on the checklist, no, it's more content, but we've had this pop up a few times. The 5 pages for the optional appendix is there if you would like to use it. Again, we don't need you to repeat back data that either we've sent to you or that's kind of general and public, but some people have taken on new analyses, and that would be appropriate to put in the appendix there. So it's optional, but we do expect that there's some type of analysis that goes into determining what strategies you picked, and that would be a good place to put that. And then the next question will there be a list of members of the review teams to share with us?
Sure, we can put that up on the Completion Lab so that you can see who's involved. These are everyone that was called upon from the campus was either on the Performance Metrics Working Group or was a key member of their campus completion team and also attended the summit. So we strategically tapped into that population. I'm happy to share that.
So another timeline question from the review process: what date should we expect feedback from the review teams, and what date will the final revised reports be due?
That's a good question. We are hopefully we will have kind of written feedback to you after the reviews no later than July 27th. That's our target date. So hopefully that would give you a couple of weeks to take a look at that and submit the final plans back to us no later than August 22nd.
And really that's going to be just the beginning of this kind of review or coaching process. But we'll have the written feedback, but then we hope to structure some conference calls, maybe in-person meetings if needed, to really give you the chance to do some in-depth discussion beyond just written feedback with the people in the review teams, and then hopefully reviewers too will learn from that process and get new ideas.
Unable to download the checklist?
Okay. I'll double check on that and see. Is anybody else having trouble downloading the checklist? You might try right-click or file save as, also unable to. Okay. I'm sorry about that. We'll get that fixed, and if not, then we'll send out a quick email to the campus contacts with that. Right, and one of the last questions we had from the registration was how much detail is needed about funds for implementing plans. On this, a lot of these will be new strategies in a sense, and a lot of them, if we're looking at the institutional mission and really, I hate the phrase pushing the envelope, but in that sense, we know it's going to be hard to estimate specific funds on that. And so I don't think we're looking for details on that, but it should be something that's within reach of the institution, given everything that we're all dealing with at this point in the state. So use your judgment on that. Kind of a non-answer, sorry.
Yeah, I would think most of the detail of the budgeting process would be kind of done on your campuses, because you all are sorting out how to use the money that was allocated this year that was around the college completion agenda. So I would imagine most of those specifics will be internal to your campus. rather than sharing a lot of that information with us, at this point anyway.
So the campus completion plan checklist is a docx format, which may be causing some people trouble. It's pulling up okay here on my computer. Again, we'll get that out in email form just to make sure everybody has it. So that covers the registration questions. Again, please feel free to type any questions or use your mic and tell us verbally. Right. Okay, so we have one question about related to the policy, the idea of a policy task force. The question is, some of our strategies need to wait on some policy changes that USG said they will consider addressing. Is there a plan to look at those policies that have been discussed on the completion lab?
Yes, certainly. Dr. Davis is in the process of setting up a policy, kind of an analysis task force to look at our policies. However, that task force will not begin its work until probably the beginning of the fall semester. So I think it's very important in your plan to communicate what those policies are and, what, I'm not sure to make a recommendation to change it, but in other words, be sure and point out in your campus plan that if you've got a strategy that you want to implement, but there's board policy that's preventing you from doing that, go ahead and communicate that to us now. We are very hopeful that in the campus plan process, we'll pull out some things to charge this task force to look at specifically. So feel free to communicate that. And
related to that, do check the form on the completion lab. There's an old comment, but it's a very good long analysis of several potential policy issues and implications of completion under watchdog metrics. If you go to the forum on quality teaching and learning, check that out. Continue the discussion on there. Can we present our report in a chart format rather than straight narrative? I would say it's tough to convey really the type of information that we need in chart format. I think charts will help explain the narrative, but really the detail that you get and showing that progression of thought is better conveyed through narrative. And knowing the audience, too, that this is going to be going to at the governor's office, that they may not have either the context to understand kind of the transition with some of the images or charts. So please do use charts anywhere you want and put those in the appendix too if you need to. But we do want to see kind of a mostly straight narrative. Again, 10 pages, not quite a lot, 1 to even 2 spaces for the lines. So it shouldn't be too cumbersome. All right. Go ahead, Niall.
I didn't have a question.
Okay. All right. So we got 2 questions coming in the chat window. Let's take this bottom one first. Where do we stand in the process regarding USG performance metrics? So there was the USG metrics working group. I just want to make sure we're not confusing 2 things. There's the higher ed funding commission going on, assuming you're talking about the USG metrics working group, which we didn't really term performance, but it's so the recommendations went from the working group to academic affairs, to Houston Davis, and we're in that process of continuing to vet those and then looking at how to turn around and implement that next. So it's still in process. And then we have a specific one about how to change adjustments to previously set targets, graduation rates using IPEDS definitions, assuming that the proposed metrics are approved. Susan, do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm trying. I think I need some. Can someone, whoever posed this question, can you provide some clarification? Because are you referring to, for example, maybe like the transfer, like the ways the data have been sort of disaggregated, or anyway? So if you could provide a little bit more information. I mean, basically, the CCA metrics use the metrics. The CCA metrics begin with the first-time full-time freshman cohort and the first-time part-time freshman cohort, and we've done that for years. But they add the transfer cohort. Okay, so so what you could do is you could just build on that. You could build on, if you've set targets for those first-time freshmen cohorts in the past, or first-time part-time cohorts in the past, and then build on that by looking at your targets for transfer students. Does that answer your question?
Can you all hear us?
Yes, go ahead.
So this question was from us. We, I guess the difference that we're not quite yet understanding is that the changes in the populations that would be included in the proposed metrics, those would affect anything that we're reporting out in terms of a rate, graduation rates, retention rates, and so on. And so we're not quite sure, would we want to make adjustments to any previously set targets, such as the ones that were in the RPG reports, or are we going to continue to report out on the IPEDS rates and then also report out with the adjusted rates with the new metrics?
Okay, I think I think it's best that we will continue to be reporting out on the IPEDS rates. Those aren't going to go away. So I think that to try to simplify the answer here, you would be adding to those. So, and basically with the performance metrics, for the most part, what we were doing was suggesting or recommending that that we just disaggregate by some new categories that we hadn't been reporting on in the past. So, for example, like with the Pell Grant students, like disaggregating by Pell Grant status, or by age, or by, for example, first generation student, which we don't have at the moment. But those were some of the recommendations in the performance metrics. Does that help?
Yeah, I think one of the things we know we all need to do in this question that's come up with the performance metrics, or sorry, the USD metrics working group, is that we've got solid recommendations, but figuring out how to operationalize that and do the correct data collection such that we're getting the right numbers out is going to take some work. So we know we need to disaggregate data along those lines, but defining first generation, making sure everyone's tracking adults correctly and in the same way is going to take some work, and identifying who's military, who's not military, who's entering into this transition. So that's the work that we're going to be looking at. But like Susan said, certain reporting requirements nationally are not going away, and those include complete College of America metrics. So again, we get, on the completion checklist, a few said you got it. If you said you didn't, it is a docx format, and it's the first time I think I've uploaded that, so that's a problem. I'll change that to a doc as soon as I get back, and we'll also email it out to the campus contacts, so don't worry about that. We'll get it to you.
Students from open.
Okay, I see the question about graduation and retention rates that include students from other USG institutions. I just want to clarify, is this a question that has to do with giving credit to institutions who transfer their students to other USG institutions, and then the native institution receiving credit for that, the graduation of that student?
Yes, that's what we're asking about.
Yes, that one is in the category that excuse me, that Art mentioned, that we still have to figure out how we're going to operationalize that. So at the moment, I don't believe there's any expectation that you try to report on that area at this point.
Okay, so it looks like questions are dying down a bit here. We're going to stay on a few minutes, but again, feel free to just speak up, raise your hand, put a chat in the chat box, and we'll hold on here for a few more minutes. And again, while we're waiting, campus plans, July 1st, to Houston Davis via Angela Thomas, her email on the news and announcement on the completion lab from the President's office.
We're trying to kind of minimize the buildup of email in Dr. Davis's email box, so as long as you get them to Angela Thomas, you don't need to copy him or send them directly to him.
Yes.
Yes.
Do you have a problem with spelling?
And so we're typing Angela's email in there right now. And there was a final question from the registration, but we're going to address that offline and contact that person. So
yeah,
we'll get to you on that. So hearing nothing else, I think we're going to sign off here.
Absolutely, and feel free to continue to post questions on the completion lab or contact us directly if you need any assistance as you're finishing up these reports.
Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.